I wanted to start out with a story. I heard a story about this woman, Linda, and she's a school principal in the United States. She was brought in to turn around a school that was labeled low-performing and persistently dangerous. And this school was in a really bad neighborhood, and so they had really low test scores, a lot of weapons, a lot of drugs. So she was brought in to turn that school around. She comes into that school, first day, she calls an assembly. Everybody meets in the hall similar to this, and she starts to lay down the rules. This is what I expect from you. I expect you to show up to school. I expect you to do the work. And she goes on and on. And during her speech, a student in the background of the hall calls out, Miss, why do you keep calling this a school? This is not a school. And it takes her aback. And she realizes, wow, that's true. This is not a school. The lights in the hallways are dim because most of them are blown out. Many of the classrooms have garbage in them and old broken furniture. Most of the classrooms are empty anyway because students don't attend because they're scared. They can't handle the bullying and the weapons anymore. The teachers are scared. They come to work and they don't expect much from the few students that show up, but they just show up. This is not a school. So she begins to change the culture of the school. She doesn't change what you teach, she teaches, she begins to change the culture. And the way she does it is she creates a coalition of the willing, some leaders, some educators that are actually still hopeful, have some hope. And she creates a leadership team, and she participates and does this with them. She takes, light bulbs and she puts them in the hallways. And she goes to the classroom and she takes out the broken furniture and fills 2 dumpster trucks of trash every single day for a year. And she holds assemblies where students can come and they can ask her questions like, why do we have to follow rules? And she explains it to them. And she hears them and their fears. But most of all, she loves them. She gets on the intercom system every single morning and she says this to her students, who are poor, who usually have single-parent families, who don't often see their parents and their families. She says this, if nobody told you that they loved you today, know that I do, and I always will. And when she looks at her students, she doesn't see people with no prospects. She really believes in them, and she sees what they can become. So what did Linda do? She set the context of the school, not the content. And the effect of that was the next year, test scores went up 170%. And the context is who you're being, and the content is what you're doing. I mean, after all, we're human beings, not human doings. And she changed the context of the school from one of fear to one of love. Every single day, she just drummed that message. And when we're talking about organizations, what we're talking about is context. Culture is the context in organizations. And the context in organizations is the way a group of people are being together. It's their collective identity. I mean, organizations are made up of people, after all, right? That's what makes up an organization. I want you to take a minute in your notebooks and fill in the blank. Think about your team, think about your company. Fill in this blank. We are. Just take a moment, fill that in. We are. We are creative. Maybe we're cautious, fearful, innovative. That's beginning to touch on your collective identity, your culture of your organization. But let's zoom in on the context a little bit more. The context is made up of molecules. It has a structure that underlies it. What is context actually made up of? I propose that it's made up of beliefs. We believe that there's a certain way that we're going to work together. We believe that there's a certain way that we have to be together. And what creates context is how we show up and those shared beliefs, how they overlap. That creates the context, which creates the culture. So my definition of culture is a set of shared beliefs that form a collective identity. And this is also why notoriously culture is difficult to shift, to design, to change, because you're working with collective identity, you're working with a collective ego at this point. And very naturally, those are things that are difficult for people to let go of, for people to change. But it's possible. But why does culture matter anyway? I mean, Maria just gave a great talk about being a change maker. I'm here talking about culture. Why does it matter? Well, in a lot of ways, similar to the example that I gave with Linda, culture drives results. If you're wanting different results in your organization, culture is driving that, because beliefs drive behavior and behaviors drive results. But what we often do is we'll just focus on behaviors. We'll create a new process or a new method or a new policy, and that's going to give us new results. Well, oftentimes that works for a short period of time, and then things just kind of go back to normal. They go back to where it always has been, because you didn't actually attempt and address the underlying issue, which are beliefs. So how do we get to our desired results? We address the underlying beliefs. Beliefs drive behaviors, behaviors drive results. So I, having worked with several organizations, have been able to identify a few core beliefs that organizations often have when that drive their culture. And I want you, as I'm explaining these core beliefs, I want you to reflect for yourself which ones might be true for your organization. One of the core beliefs that organizations often hold is that we're right. Our perspective is the right one. We're right. The behaviors that this drives often is really having an attitude of better than. It's also being very exclusive, so you won't include a lot of other perspectives in. You'll just hire people that are like you, that also believe that whatever you believe is the right way. Show of hands, anybody work in an organization that really believes that the way they're looking at things is right? It's the right one. Yeah. Another belief. The world is happening to us. This is very prevalent in many organizations. So the technology is changing, the market's changing, all of this is happening, and it's happening to us. What behaviors come about from this belief? Well, you just become very reactive. You're no longer innovating, you're no longer visioning, you're just reacting to the short term, whatever's coming at you. And this is a very, very prevalent kind of belief in many organizations. Anybody have this belief? Yeah, a couple people. My group has this. I work at Salesforce. My group has this specific belief. A lot of designers have this specific belief that we're special because we're designers. And we do design thinking, and we have a design process, and we know something you don't know, and we're special. This is often a core belief that drives behavior. But this is what happens when my group and other groups believe this, or designers believe this. When we believe we're special, we believe others that we're working with are less than us. And then we don't engage with them. We don't share information as readily, and we create these silos. We create our design silos. And that kills innovation, like Marie said. And a lot of times in my group, we do a lot of visioning because we're special and we can do that. but doesn't get executed. You don't see the light of day. They don't see the light of day. Anybody work in this one? We're special? Another core belief. There's not enough. There's not enough time. There's not enough resources. There are not enough ideas. There's not enough people to work on this. There's always something that is not enough. Behavior that results in this is hoarding, holding on to information, to ideas, not taking risks, those kinds of things. Anybody feel that they work in there's not enough? Many people work in there's not enough. Yeah. There are winners and there are losers, and we have to win. That's a common belief that some organizations have, right? And this creates a very aggressive, competitive culture. It's very self-serving culture where people will, in different departments, in different areas, will just look out for themselves and make sure that they win. Even though it's detrimental to the company overall, they will compete against each other. Anybody work in a we have to win culture? Few people, yeah. And finally, there's a culture of, and there's a belief of people are objects. And I think this is one is very, very common. And in this one, people are either vehicles to get to what I want, people are resources, people are human capital, or people are obstacles to getting what I want. And when I work with companies that have this belief, most of the employees say, oh, I work in a soulless organization. This organization has no soul. It doesn't care about me. I don't matter. And people are no longer seen as people. They're seen as objects. Anybody work in this? Yeah. And just understanding that these beliefs are driving our behaviors and that these beliefs are the foundation and the molecules of behavior, of culture, we can now start to work with it. And we can actually design culture. It doesn't have to come by default. So I actually spoke with currently a Lyft employee, which is a competitor to Uber. I spoke with him last week. And he used to work as a general manager at Uber, and he confirmed that the underlying core belief of Uber is to win at all costs. So their belief is there are winners and there are losers, and we have to win. And he tried to bring that mentality into Lyft, and his team will not follow him because it does not actually align with the culture of his current team. But what did it create? The CEO stepped down, right? There's a lot of negative press about how Uber's aggressive, sexist, and all of that comes from this core belief that we must win. Compare that to Netflix, which is consistently voted one of the best places to work in the world. And they started off their company with a 100-page PowerPoint culture deck. So they actually thought about the type of people they want to work with, the type of environment they want to have, how they want to be together when they do the work. And they're continuing to iterate on that. This isn't something that it's one and done. They continue to change it and to evolve it. And Netflix is doing great profit-wise as well. But what does it take? What does it take to actually design culture, to work with the belief systems? Well, it takes systems thinking. It takes a systems mindset. You can't just say, oh, well, we have these parts, and we're going to change the belief of all these parts. They're all interconnected. Beliefs are interconnected. The people working together are interconnected. And there's something greater that emerges, greater than the sum of its parts. And so when we approach culture design, we really have to use the tools of systems thinking in order to be able to actually create a change, actually be able to design that. So I created basically a 4-step process for culture design using systems thinking. Step 1 is to map it. It's to tangibly visualize the current state of the culture. And there are many different tools, and we're actually going to try one together today. We're going to do it together. And this is a systems tool. So this is called revealing the system to itself. So we're working with the system, and we're going to map it and actually show the system to itself, what's actually happening. And I promise you, the first thing that's going to happen is people are going to get scared. That's what happens. So step 2 is to help people, once you map it, once you actually visibly, tangibly make the invisible visible and you see it and you all are looking at it together, is to accept it. To accept the current culture as it is without judgment. And until you pass this step, the next step and change cannot happen. Because if you're showing up, if you're being judgmental about where it currently is, that's what you're going to get back. You're going to get a lot of resistance, you're going to get a lot of fear from the system. Then step 3 is actually to choose new beliefs that will support the results you're wanting to see. So actually be intentional about your culture, which is be intentional about what you believe together, how you want to show up together. And the fourth step is to lead it. So be the change you want to see. Follow some of the steps that Marie talked about. Create rituals and practices that support the new beliefs and allow the behaviors that you're wanting to be supported and to become habit. Okay? So here's what we're going to do together. We're going to actually map your current culture. We're going to do it in a different way since we're not in a workshop setting. I'm going to walk you through a visualization to meet your culture body. So if we're approaching this from a systems thinking standpoint, what we're going to do is we're going to think of your culture as an entity. I find it helpful just to think of it as a body, like a human body, as a person. So we're personifying the culture, and get a sense for it. Find out what it's like for you. What is your sense of the culture? So I'm going to take you through a little exercise. We're going to go through a little relaxation exercise and then a visualization to meet your culture. Are you ready? Ready to meet the culture? Okay. So put everything down. Sit in a relaxed position. And either close your eyes or just softly look into the distance. And I want you to notice the rising and falling of your chest as you breathe in and out. And notice the temperature and texture of the air as you breathe. And listen for the furthest sound that you can hear. And listen for the closest sound that you can hear. And in your next breath, let your imagination go to your favorite place in nature. And begin to walk around this place. And notice what the light like is in this place. Listen for some sounds, maybe bird sounds or the sounds of water nearby. And as you continue to walk around this place, touch something, maybe the bark of a tree. Let this place come so alive that you can almost taste it. And now you hear the sound of someone approaching. And who's approaching you is your culture body. And you feel a little excitement in the air as your culture body approaches you. And as they do, notice what they look like. What is their particular style? And as your culture body comes close, Greet each other in whatever way feels right to you. And ask your culture body, what do you want me to know about you? And hear their answer in your own mind. And ask your culture body, what is next for you? And hear their answer in your own mind. And ask your culture body, how may I support you? And hear their answer in your own mind. And as you have this conversation, notice your culture's body personality. What is their style? How are they being? And take a deep breath in. And come back to this time and space. You can wiggle your toes and open your eyes when you're ready. And your culture body may not be a human body. It may be something else entirely. Anything that you sensed or see was just fine. And it's having the ability to zoom out a bit from our day-to-day work and see what that context is like that we're swimming in. And as you may embark on shifting and designing your culture, know that that's a slow process. This is a pace layering diagram, and it shows that both nature and culture move slowly. And so we're talking in a matter of years, not months. And I want to end by saying, you might want to take some steps after hearing Marie, after hearing myself, of influencing your culture, of maybe revealing some of the beliefs or taking a look and reflecting some of the beliefs that drive the culture in your organization. And as you do that, as you go forward to do that, what I want you to know is that if nobody told you that they love you today, know that I do. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Alla. I want to just stay there for a couple of minutes more.
Yeah. Come to the workshop tomorrow and we'll stay there.
Yeah, who's joining for the workshop tomorrow with Alla? Great. So you'll see some of us there. Yeah, just reframing myself back to stage again.
Yes.
So I was thinking, you were talking about moving through different phases. Once you map the current culture, and then you like just accept what it is. I guess it could be a bit tricky not being judgmental about the current culture. I mean, so once you get insights about what it's like, and you don't really feeling that fits into who you are or wanting to be like that. Yes. How do you have an approach for how to avoid being judgmental and more being approaching what could we be?
I don't think you can avoid being judgmental. I think it's okay and normal to have feelings, whatever they arise about the culture. And what's important is to feel your feelings to completion. Not try to push them away, I shouldn't be judgmental, but to really feel whatever judgment you feel. Usually it stems from fear. That's what happens. So when you map the culture, not only yourself, but other people that you're mapping it with, will have a fear that's going to come up, and then judgment's going to come with that. And that's normal and human, and that's what we're working with. And so it's also about accepting those feelings. So that step is the hardest step, honestly, but the most important in order to move forward.
But I guess also, I mean, what usually can happen is that you get stuck with like, okay, this is what it is, and we're not happy with it, but we're just, you know, a bit like, how do we move on?
Yeah, well, the key question to ask yourself is, how is the current culture serving us? There are some ways, otherwise it wouldn't exist.
Yeah.
There are some ways that it's serving and providing results that you're wanting, and so it's recognizing that as well. And any disappointment or judgment you feel is pointing you to, well, there's something that I'm wanting, there's a dream that I have. What is that as well?
Great, thanks. Alla, you're also stating, which I love, that we can be better together and by forming a collective identity. Can collaboration in itself be an enabler for us to expand our own individual comfortable zones?
Well, collaboration oftentimes will bring up the differences in our beliefs. And so it's a great place to actually take time to reflect and say, well, oh, I see there's a difference, there's a tension. We often talk about creative tension, right? Yeah. There's a tension here. What is it that you believe? What is it that I believe? What is it that we believe or want to believe or need to believe in order to create the result that we're wanting? So I think it's a great place for self-awareness in that case.
Good point. Today, we're listening to people like you and Maria and everyone else who have really enabled impact and change in organizations. But after attending this conference, we're all getting back to our ordinary work cultures and contexts. Yes. If you want to put some of today's insights, I mean yours or other insights you have gotten today, in action and enable a cultural change back home, where do you start? What's just the first step for us to make a difference tomorrow?
I think the first step is to become aware of, again, those beliefs that are driving the culture, that are driving the behavior. And something I didn't mention is that mapping piece doesn't happen by yourself. You don't go into your office and suddenly map everything out and you're like, okay, this is what the culture is. But you have to be inclusive and bring in all the voices of the system in order to do that. So one thing you could do is, hey, let's take my team and let's just map out what we believe and start to reveal that to ourselves, start to become aware. But also you can ask yourself, just individually, you can ask yourself, how am I showing up to my work? Am I showing up in fear or am I showing up in trust? And that is your way of being, and that will impact other people and the work. And so you can start with you and how you show up and what you believe about work as well.
Thank you so much, Alla, for coming here. Of course, we also have a gift for you here. A big applause for Alla.
Thank you. Thank you.